Welcome to the late edition of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, a pretty interesting topic here today. Was going to do a recorded video, ended up doing a live stream. I figured, you know what, get a little bit of interaction with you guys, see what your thoughts are. Are you on base with me? Are you on base with ESPN, SEC, and the Big Ten? I figure we go over a bunch of this different stuff here tonight. And the topic is revolving around simply the college football playoff. And right now, there's a lot of discussion between the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Big 12 right now. And you can imagine, there's a lot of discussion on two different models, a 4-4-4 or a 4-4-2-2-1 model. 4 SEC teams get in, 4 Big Ten teams get in, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, and then one Big 12 team, and then one group of 5, and then you have 3 at-large bids. Or, as the ACC and the Big 12 have really started to push forward, is the 5-11 model, which is the 5 conference champions and then 11 at-large bids. We're going to go over that stuff here tonight and talk about it. But first, the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. Again, great sponsorship, guys. Obviously, they have the Pitt can that's there. Very cool topic, very cool partnership with Pitt. They do a great job. But anytime you go to Colonial Beer, there's tremendous people there from top to bottom, and how they treat people and how they interact. They're easy to talk to, and they love to certainly talk ball. They love to talk Pitt football. They love to talk Pitt sports. So anytime you're there, make sure you reach out to them. Go in there. They certainly have plenty of different offerings between your heavier beers, your lighter lagers. Make sure you go see them. Tremendous people from top to bottom. Great customer service. Make sure you go see them today. Again, at Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA, 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group. With Brian Thompson, call them. An attorney on your side, call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Obviously, tremendous people. You got to meet Brian at the spring game. Many of you did. Had great interactions with Brian. He's a tremendous individual, has a great family, comes from a great family, and does a tremendous job with each one of his clients. Again, the great thing about Brian being a smaller law firm instead of being a larger law firm is he cares about you, the individual. He cares about what you do day in and day out, and he cares about the issues at hand that you bring to him. He guides you through the process and makes sure any questions that you have, he answers them on the spot. If he doesn't have the answers, he'll make sure to guide you through the process of getting those answers from other people. Make sure, again, you call Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. The K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen, www.thekingscraft.com. Again, tremendous brand. He's done a really good job. Plenty of different testings that he's been involved in. I'm not a big coffee guy, and he's turned me into a coffee guy. Preferably, mine is the AK Espresso. I love to have one every morning. All I need is one, gets me going. I go to my office, and boom, I'm already ready to get going for the day. Guys, again, the K Collection, AK Espresso, the Guatemala batch. Make sure you go there. It's a black bag, the backwards K Collection. Make sure you go in there. Great partnership. Austin's done a great job. A Mount Lebanon alum, a Pittsburgh alum. Make sure you go there and go see the K Collection coffee brand by Austin Kitchen at www.thekingscraft.com. Again, the black bag, the backwards K, the K Collection, a very cool design, gold and black, reminds them almost of the Steelers. So make sure you go see that today and try yours today. Guys, again, the big topic of today really comes down to one simple thing. And again, it's the college football playoff. I've seen a lot of discussion online. I was actually watching Kuz's Corner, who does a tremendous job, covers West Virginia athletics, West Virginia football. You guys have seen I've been on his show. I'm actually going to have him on my show here pretty soon, hopefully, to talk about this in general and get more information about it and see his thoughts about it. But I was watching him really debate on a number of different shows. He was talking about it live today. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to jump on here real quick and just get with you guys to see what you guys think. For me personally, there's 2 models, the 4-4-2-2-1-3. Again, 4 SEC, 4 Big 10, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, and then 1 group of 5, and then 3 at-large bids. Here's why I believe that the 5+11 model, which is 5 conference champions and 11 at-large bids, is truly the way to go. Number one, for me, I think that the more you have guaranteed teams in this conference, in this playoff that we're going to have, truly goes to show, one, we're not even allowing the games to be played anymore. To allow certain teams in certain conferences to be into the playoff automatically truly ruins, one, the sport. The games itself truly matter less. So, for instance, if there comes a time whenever the Big Ten maybe isn't as good as the SEC, boom, they lose. Maybe they don't get as 4 teams in. They don't get 4 teams in. Maybe they only get 2 teams in, depending upon what the year looks like. Maybe they only get 3 teams in. The same thing goes with the SEC. Maybe they're not as good as the Big Ten, or maybe not as good as the ACC and the Big 12. And there might be more than one group of 5 team that gets in. Would that happen very often? Highly unlikely. But the point is that when you allow this portion to allow 4 teams from the Big Ten and the SEC to get in, one, you're automatically giving those 2 conferences automatic money, because the more teams you get in, the more money you get from the college football playoff. To start, when you get into the playoff, each conference gets $4 million per school. So automatically, 4 times 4, $16 million, boom, right to the SEC, $16 million right away to the Big Ten. When you advance to the quarterfinals, you get another $4 million. You get to the semis, it's $6 million. You get to the national championship, it then becomes $6 million from there. So, one, it really matters on how many teams are getting into the playoff. For me, one, I'm all about earn your way in. Last year, a proven point right here, if the playoff really had a 5-11 model, and it was 16 teams, not 12, if it was 16 teams, automatically the ACC would have had 3 teams last year get in the playoff, and that would have been Clemson, SMU, and Miami. So those 3 teams would have gotten into the playoff. If you allow yourself to get into this model of a 4-4, 2-2, 1-3 model, there's a possible chance that you only get 2 teams in again, and then not even 3 teams, not even maybe potentially even 4. I think you're really starting to pigeon-toe yourself to you're only allowing yourself to have 2 teams in and into the college football playoff. Some people might say, well, you still have 3 at-larges. Well, really think about it for a second. You're going to have at least 1 team, more than likely be Notre Dame. So that takes away 1 automatic bid. And also, I got to say, too, if I'm a Notre Dame fan and I'm a Notre Dame athletic director, which he is fighting hard for the 5-11 model, which he has to fight for, or he's going to be in a lot of trouble, Notre Dame fans should be really extremely contentious and nervous about a 4-4, 2-2, 1-3 model, because now you only have 3 spots to get in. If there are any teams in front of you, whether it's SEC, Big 10, Big 12, or the ACC, Notre Dame's not going to get in. So they're especially wanting to make sure that it's going to be a 5-11 model. Preferably, again, earn your way in. But there's going to be some years where not exactly the SEC is better than the Big Ten, or the Big Ten's better than the SEC. And there's going to be times where the ACC might have 2, 3, potentially 4 teams in the college football playoff. The same thing could potentially go for the Big 12. I understand why a number of Big 12 outlets are not happy about the 5-11 model, because last year they were only allowed 1 team in the college football playoff. More than likely, if there was a 16-team league, a 16-team college football playoff, they would have only allowed really 1 more team, at most 1 team from the Big 12 to get in. So I understand why they want that 4-4, 2-2, 1-3 model, because it guarantees them 2 spots. My biggest thing is when you're automatically saying to yourself that, it's not about anymore about what the teams do on the field, I truly think you're devaluing the game. And, Commissioner Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark of the Big 12, the commissioner of the Big 12, has said, well, we're going to do what's best for college football. For starters, I think that's an outrageous comment from both Jim Phillips and Commissioner Brett Yormark. Your job is not to do what's best right now for college football, because guess what's going to happen? Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti is the conference commissioner of the Big Ten, are not worrying about college football. They're being paid by the Big Ten to make sure that their interests for the Big Ten are from top to bottom allowed to go on there. I'm actually going to see here, guys. I'm getting a comment in here that maybe some people can't comment. Let me see here. Hold on 1 second, guys. One second here. My fault, guys. Here we go. There we go. Steve, Appreciate you again. Agree with everything you have said so far. Thank you so much, guys. Now you can comment in here for whatever reason. YouTube has done that. StreamYard has done that. Apologize for that, guys. Again, you can now comment in the comment section. Go right ahead. Again, if you want to get your question up on the screen, by the way, make sure you hit the super chat button down below. Make a small donation to the podcast, and we'll put it up on the screen when it's highlighted. Also, too, if you've not done so, hit the like button and subscribe down below to the show. Our goal is to get to 2,000 subscribers, and we're starting to really slowly and for surely get on the way there. So again, now you guys can comment in the comment section. Go right ahead. Again, Steve, to your point, I agree. To your understanding where I'm coming from in terms of it's got to be able to play your way in. And I think that the guarantees to get into the playoff at this point are a little bit ridiculous. And to guarantee that only certain teams get in there, and people might say, well, you have two more large bids. The ACC and the Big 12 can fight for those two extra at-large bids. My question is then, if it goes to that league, though, where you have a 4-4, 2-2, 1-3 model, Notre Dame gets in, you take away one at-large bid. Well, what happens when eventually the Big 10 and the ACC start to have the Big 10 and the SEC start to have playing games, and they start having almost like a round robin tournament before the conference championship? They allow those games to take precedent. ESPN, CBS, and then all of a sudden start to really televise those football games. Then the committee looks at those football games and starts to really place where those games are. And those playing games allow them to decipher, hey, maybe the SEC should have 5 or 6 teams get in. I think at this point, you are much better off playing the schedules that we have, going into a 5-11 model, allowing yourself to where some years you get 2, 3, if not more teams in, or sometimes when the league's not as strong, you get 1 to maybe 2 teams in. I think it makes the most sense. Tim, hi all. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for tuning into the show. I think it has a lot of factors and a lot of things to do with this. And I think that playing your way into the college football playoff matters more. That's really the biggest thing for me. Play your way in. And I think that, I was a big proponent back then when the ACC and the Big 12 allowed the SEC and the Big 10 to have all this power in terms of what's able to happen, what's able to occur with the college football playoff. And people said, well, what if they break off and have their own playoff? Then go let them have it, guys. I mean, people don't understand that if they go off and have their own playoff, people are going to boycott it. People are not going to watch it. I mean, there's numerous millions of people who will not tune into those games because their teams have no chance of getting into those championship games. That's a fact. Also, too, it didn't help that, the college football playoff thought they could really go up against the NFL in terms of ratings. The college football playoff got crushed. The playoff did not do as well because they were trying to go head-to-head with the NFL. And the NFL absolutely crushed college football. And it will always be like that. College football will never match viewership of what the NFL gets. A 5-11 model, for me personally, is the way to go. And I think it's the best way to do it. I think it's the most fair way to do it. Because at the end of the day, each team's got to earn their way in. And if you have conference games, let's say, for instance, if they think a team should be better or the ACC should be better or the Big 12 should be better, then you have to schedule those out-of-conference games. That's what it comes down to. Win the football games. It's that simple. Alabama was left out last year because they lost to a 6-6 Oklahoma team and they lost to a 7-5 Vanderbilt team. That's what happens. You can't have that kind of stuff happen where you lose those games automatically and think you can get into the playoff. People are watching. Now, a couple years ago, obviously, again, I am by no means a Florida State fan. I think their fans act a certain way. It only hurts them in the long run. But at the end of the day, even with a backup quarterback, Florida State should have been in the playoff. It's 100% a fact. They should have been in the playoff. If you look at this past year, look at Georgia, for instance. They just hid the injury. They acted like there was a potential place where Carson Beck goes in, when in reality, there was absolutely no chance he was going to play. Georgia has a backup quarterback in there, and Georgia loses to Notre Dame. Where maybe if Carson Beck goes and plays that game, you start to have that decipher to say, hey, they maybe actually win that football game. And look, Georgia was not a typical Georgia team that we've seen in the past where Georgia is just an absolute physical specimen from top to bottom. Ohio State was truly, if not the best team. I feel like that loss to Michigan truly woke them up. They had a loss to Oregon early on in the year. Then they lose to a 7-5 Michigan team which was embarrassing on all levels. But then I think that game really woke them up and understood what was truly on the table for them to be successful. And you look at that roster at Ohio State, which is truly impressive. I mean, from top to bottom. And again, Jeremiah Smith was a true freshman last year. I truly believe he could have gone to the National Football League this year. That's how special of a wide receiver he's going to be. I think he's going to be that good, not just in college, but in the National Football League. But just some teams make those ways. And then you see Tennessee in the playoff. They get absolutely smacked. No one talks about how they get absolutely crushed in the college football playoff. Never even a point in that game against Ohio State was it a ball game. You just look at the teams and how they played. I think it's just a fact that you have to have a 5-11 league where some years you have more teams in, some years you don't. But if you go to a 4-4, 2-2, 1-3 model, you basically pigeon-toed yourself to where you get two teams in and that's it. And then the at-large bids, if you have those games where you have the playing games by the SEC or the playing games by the Big Ten, those will take precedent. And you're allowing the committee to watch those games and almost say, well, they had playing games, they had that extra game, they had great matchups. Automatically, they should automatically get the at-large bits. And then automatically they're going to get 5 or 6 teams in. I think that it's a much better way where you're doing a 5+11, and it's how it should be. You are not awarding, as I call it, participation awards. It's a 5-11, okay? And you're basically allowing your teams to play it out. There will be some discrepancies. There always are. That will never not exist. In the college football playoff committee room, there's going to be ways that they're going to lean certain ways to the SEC or lean certain ways to the Big Ten. I think overall, though, that is the fairest way to do it. And there's going to be potentially years where the ACC, if it was last year, 16 teams, the ACC has 3 teams in there. And I think Miami potentially makes a run. That's how good Miami's offense was. And heck, the number 1 overall draft pick, Cam Ward, was a quarterback. I think that's an automatic way to say, hey, there's a potential chance out there. And I think that the more that the ACC teams invest in the football like we're seeing, there's potential that that conference gets even better. And I think that, again, you look at a lot of these conferences, the Big Ten, you look at Ohio State and Oregon, and then you have that next tier with Penn State, and then that next tier where everybody else right now, where Michigan's not back to where it needs to be. I don't know if it ever will get back to where it needs to be. Whereas under Jim Harbaugh, and obviously they had the cheating scandal, what happened and what occurred over there. But overall, you really have 3 teams in the Big Ten. I would say really 3 or 4 teams in the SEC. I think the SEC overall, I think in my opinion, is the best conference. I think from a number of different levels. But I think you have Georgia. I think you have Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee. And even if you wanted to slide in there, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Alabama. I think those are your top 4 teams in the conference right there. Missouri's starting to make their way up there. They're certainly investing a lot of money in terms of NIL. It'll be fun to watch and see what they do this year. It'll be fun to see how Texas A&M tries to bounce back. Again, they have so much money down there, but they can't find a way to put together a team where just consistently wins. But that'll be something to watch. Tim Bales. Agree completely. We should never willingly become second-class citizens. They are trying to secure spots before the salary cap kicks in and we start evening out. And that's another point, Tim. And you got a great point there. The base of the point where they're like second-class citizens. Also, too, it's not like this is like 5, 10, 15 years ago where, the SEC is just, they've got teams like Alabama with Nick Saban where their top three players on the depth chart are all potential starters. NIL and the transfer portal have really opened up this numerous of levels of competition, and the distribution of talent across all 4 divisions and even some group of 5 teams has truly showed over the years, and is starting to produce even more. Guys don't want to wait 2 or 3 years to get on the football field. They're going to transfer, and we're starting to see more and more of the wealth start to be distributed. And then the SEC, now for the last 2 years, have not been in the college football national championship. That's a big decision. That's a big, massive factor in terms of how they're able to brand their league. And then we're starting to see an equal distributor happen across the board. Steve, TV networks have ruined college football rivalries and are always beating the drum for the Big Ten and SEC, which sways the average fan to think the SEC and Big are better than they are. It's a 5-11 model or bust. Steve, I agree. And I think that has a lot of talking points to the perception. For example, I think today I saw ESPN, for instance, teams with the best chance to make the college football playoff. You saw the list come out here. There's teams like that are out there. I think, if I'm not mistaken here, let me see here if I can look up. ESPN released their early top 25, which, I mean, again, it's early and it's just completely out of whack. Let me see here. See here. Here we go. So I'm actually going to share my screen with you guys here. Let's see here. Share. So when you look at the screen here right now, again, here's the early top 25, which is pretty outrageous overall. I mean, Texas, Georgia, I mean, I get that. Alabama is not up to where it used to be. They have a lot to prove. Ohio State dropping to 4. I think Ohio State should be higher. Penn State, I understand where they are because of the hype there. They've always had a good defense with Jim Knowles. Always had a good defense with Brent Pry. Last year they had it with Indiana's old football coach. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Really good football coach. He's done a good job there. Coach Allen, Tom Allen, out of Indiana, he did a really good job. Jim Knowles is there now, and I think overall, when you see this, Jim Knowles is there. They're going to have their early parade of a national title, whatever it becomes. That's great. Whatever, have at it. Oregon, I think, should be higher. Notre Dame at 7. Texas A&M. I mean, guys, they were 7-5 last year. If I look up the rankings here, let me see here. Let's see here. Bum, 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 bum. $2024. Let's take a look at them across the board. So, for instance, when you go to the SEC, you go here. Okay, Texas was number 1. They finished first in the league. Obviously, I talked about other teams. So your top teams in this conference right now, in my opinion, are Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and I'd even put Ole Miss in there with Missouri. So, I mean, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5. 5 teams. 5 teams overall. Ole Miss finished 9-3. Alabama finished, they were 9-3 overall during the regular season. They lost numerous bad football games. But overall, Texas A&M, they were 5-3 in the conference, 8-5 overall. So they finished the regular season 7-5. That's pretty crazy to me. Miami, that makes sense to where they're at. Obviously, the hype train with Carson Beck, they did a good job. They finished towards the top of the ACC from last year. Then you have Tennessee back in there in the top 25. It makes sense why they're there, but also they just lost their starting quarterback. They bring in a different quarterback. How does that respond? They lost a number of guys to the NFL draft, to the portal. That's a whole different debacle. Clemson, I understand because they brought so many guys back. That makes sense of why they're 11, potentially even higher. LSU, they brought a lot of guys into the portal. You guys still have to see where they go. LSU is a team. Where are they at here? LSU 5-3 in conference. They finished 8-4 overall on the year, and their overall year. Then you have Ole Miss, which certainly was the crybaby of the college football playoff. Ole Miss, I mean, they're 13th. They're ranked 13th there, but overall, Ole Miss finished 9-3. They shouldn't have lost those 3 games. That's on Ole Miss. I mean, at the end of the day, don't lose the teams you're not supposed to lose to, especially losing teams. But then here's a crazy portions in here. Auburn's in here at 14. Why in God's name is Auburn in here? Okay, Auburn, who finished last year 2-6 in conference, 5-7 overall. That's comical. Then you look at a team like the Florida Gators. Why the Florida Gators in there? Florida 4-4, 8-5 overall, 7-5 to finish the year. That's an absolute joke. USC finished. Let me see here. USC finished the year 4-5 in conference, 7-6 overall, and that was because they were 6-6 going into bowl season. That's an absolute joke that they're in there. Nebraska being in the top 25 is a joke. I understand why Missouri's in there. Arkansas should no way, shape, or form be in the top 20, early top 25. Let's see where they finished at. 3-5 in conference, 7-6 overall. They finished 6-6 during the regular season. I mean, there are teams in here that you just have to laugh at. South Carolina, I can see why they're in here. I thought to finish the season pretty strong. Maybe had a strong case of potentially making the college football playoff. Kansas State, I see them in here. Arizona State made the playoff last year. It makes sense why some of these teams are in here. Obviously, SMU returns a lot back there at 20. I think they should be even higher with now more opportunities in the playoff. They had a lot more experience in the playoffs, so it made a lot of sense. Florida in there because they're outside their QB. That's great, but they still had a horrendous season last year. Quarterback's not going to change them. They need a lot more help than that. Again, guys, if you're just joining in, again, we're adding more and more people into the chat here. Again, hit the like button down below. Right now, it's free. Hit the subscribe button down below. It helps out the channel. And also, too, if you need to get your question up on the screen as we start to go through it and this question starts to come in, hit the super chat button down below, make a small donation to the podcast, and we'll get it up on the screen. Definitely more parity with the transfer portal and NIL. I still feel that's why Saban got out. Everyone can do what he did now and get away with it. I agree, Adam. I think that's the number one reason why he left is because now players starting to get paid. He doesn't like how guys were transferring out every single year. Didn't like how he was losing a number of guys in his roster. Didn't have a depth chart of really top 3 guys that you could say, hey, could be a starter anywhere on the football field. But now it's more competitive with other schools paying the same amount of cash. And I think Alabama is not number one anymore in terms of paying players because you're not paying, players anymore just $300,000 and then, a Dodge Challenger, and giving them a ride. You're paying a lot more than that, especially for wide receivers and quarterbacks. Quarterbacks getting over, $1 million plus. A lot of wide receivers getting over $1 million plus. It makes a lot of sense. And that's why he got out, because he just couldn't make the adjustment. He didn't like the way the college football was starting to go, which, again, that's his prerogative. Sherlin Luck, my man, living in SEC country for the last 25 years, I can tell you that the Southern bias is real and prevalent. The SEC is Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, Texas, and LSU. The rest are in the conference are on the same level as Pitt. I would agree. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys that you look at the Southern bias and how they lose games. The same thing goes to the Big Ten as well. I mean, overall, besides Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State, the rest of that conference, and then Indiana, you could put in them last year. Indiana had a really good year last year, but they beat up on how many other teams? I mean, Nebraska, it was their first year in 10, 15 years ago into a bowl game? I mean, that's absolutely embarrassing. Iowa's a football team where I think they play great defense, but when you're averaging 1 touchdown or 1.5 touchdowns a game, that's an absolute joke and should never happen. And again, that's why I think a lot of these conferences towards the top, it makes a lot of sense why they're there. And then obviously for the ACC's portion, I can tell you right now, Florida State has to find a way to figure it out because, when you're looking at their overall roster, I think they did a horrible job picking up Tommy Castellanos out of the transfer portal. He was benched at Boston College, was not doing a good job there, did not perform, did not handle the benching correctly. I think he's got a long way to go to mature, but we'll see. I mean, there's a whole different debacle there, but I think the rest of the way you have, the top, how many teams. But even Texas and LSU, I even put Ole Miss in there because they're certainly getting better. And Lane Kiffin has created so much success that they've never really had on a consistent basis. I think you got to put Ole Miss in there as well. Adam Vincic, Florida is in there because they upside the QB, which is bullshit. The rest of the SEC will get the benefit of being hyped by ESPN and the like. Yeah, Kentucky, Vandy, Missouri, the 2 Mississippi. So South Carolina, Auburn are contenders every 20 years or so. Exactly. And I couldn't agree more. And it was funny last year, the amount of SEC people that were trying to hype up Vandy. That's like saying, they were crapping on Pitt when Pitt won the ACC in 2021. That's 1 year. Vandy was 7-5 to finish the year, and they were trying to hype up Vandy like they were going to go to the national title. I thought that was pretty crazy in itself. But when you're watching this from a perspective of what this could potentially look like down the road, I think it's a pure fact. And what it looks like right now And it's the 5-11 model is the way to go, especially for the ACC. It may not be good for the Big 12 because, there are no major blue bloods or major brands in the Big 12. It's more like they're all the middling part of the pack. There's no major football team in the Big 12, which is why they're getting one football team in a year. And also it doesn't help that each one of them are pretty much all even. They're all good to average football teams. So if they have 2 or 3 losses, you're going to start to have a battle where you're going to probably only get one football team in. And that's going to hurt the conference overall, which has been a huge debacle for how many years. Private equity has said the same. Private equity has the conferences laid out and projected. And the Big Ten was number 1. The SEC was number 2. The ACC was number 3. And then in a distant 4th was the Big 12 because of the football teams and the universities that are there. It's just a fact. I think overall, when you look here at this early top 25, I just thought it was comical. It's just, and again, and the majority of this stuff early on in the season is because they just want things to talk about. They want other things in terms of being able to create content, being able to have those discussions day in and day out and start to say, hey, here's what the college ball playoff could potentially look like. But then again, we still have to get through the House settlement yet. That needs to still get done yet. Once that's done, there'll be a salary cap. Between the all athletic departments up to $20.5 million. Again, I expect Pitt to go to the $20.5 million from everything I've been told. I would imagine, like every other university, they're going to be using university funds plus the athletic department. It's been an absolute just whirlwind. But there's a reason why Alan Green, in terms of Pitt's perspective, Alan Green went out and hired a guy like Kyle Bruce, who comes in from Ole Miss, Tennessee, the SEC, of how he's able to drive brand revenue, obviously revenue from different forms of different areas of how they're able to bring money in and cash into corporate sponsorships, being able to work with other business development avenues to bring those monies in. It makes sense. Would it benefit if the Big 12 and ACC combined to be one conference? That's a very interesting topic and debacle that, I've talked about with numerous people. For one, I think if you combine the two conferences, I think that's just too big of a conference. I think you're looking at 30 some teams. I think there's probably some dead weight in both conferences that you look at and you say you probably want to drop off. I don't think that they ever need to combine the conferences. Maybe a scheduling agreement to where the Big 10, the Big 12 and the ACC work together, but also, the ACC's got a great relationship with the SEC in terms of rivalries. You've got Kentucky and Louisville. You've got Clemson and South Carolina. You've got Georgia and Georgia Tech. You've got Florida and Florida State. You've got Florida and Miami. You've got a number of different football teams through there from the top to bottom, and I think that it has to be something that's talked about. I'm trying to think of what other rivalries are in there between the SEC and the ACC. There's just plenty of them when you go through the list. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's any other ones. I just named off 5 or 6 different games in rivalry week there between the SEC and the ACC. I just don't think a combined merger would help the ACC and Big 12. I think more maybe like a scheduling agreement or out of conference. Certainly Pitt's doing his part with West Virginia. This will be the last year of the backyard brawl till 2029. Again, I'm a rivalry guy. I love rivalry games. I would love to see West Virginia back on the schedule going forward, even after this. Pitt will be down at Morgantown this year. I would like to have another 4-game series or just continue it every single year, but scheduling has been a pain in the butt, to say the least. And then you have, Pitt also has on the schedule Notre Dame every so often. They certainly have them on there on a rotation. Wisconsin's also on the football schedule. We've had Tennessee on here, UCF's back on there again. West Virginia will be back on there again. I'm trying to think what other teams are on there. I would certainly imagine Pitt's going to try to get another SEC team on there. I would like to get Tennessee back on there. I thought the Johnny Majors Classic was a really good football game. I thought it was fun to watch. It was a great environment to be there at Acrisure Stadium. They were certainly the hospitality down at Neyland Stadium was incredible from Tennessee fans. The Southern hospitality was incredible. That was certainly an enjoyable football game. Pitt won against the Tennessee Volunteers down at Neyland Stadium. Again, I think that those games are all out there, and you're going to have more and more. Wisconsin's also on the football schedule. We've had Iowa on there in the past. Pitt's never shied away from a tough schedule. I can tell you that. Oklahoma State's been on that schedule when Mason Rudolph and James Washington and how many other guys were on that roster. Certainly interesting games from top to bottom. And I think Pitt has never been shied away from that. But for me personally, I think that with the 8 conference games, Pitt should be doing the 8 conference games, one more Power 4 team, which would be 9 games overall. This year, Pitt's going to be doing 2 P4 games between Notre Dame and West Virginia. Then I think you got to do a group of 5 and an FCS. Out of those 4 non-con games, you should have one group of 5 at FCS, in my opinion. Pitt should have no more than 9 to 10 P4 games. And I would really say in this aspect, I would say even 10. I like the 10 aspect. There are a number of teams out there from the Big Ten that only have, for instance, look at the Big Ten. Indiana, I mean, they only have 9 P4 games. Penn State only has 9 P4 games. There's so many debacles out there, and I think that the Big Ten is just extremely overrated from really the middle on down. I mean, USC is not what they used to be. They're shying away from the Notre Dame rivalry because just Lincoln Riley can't perform at USC. They're a middling to below average, mediocre school at this point in terms of football. UCLA has struggled quite a bit. They hired Pitt Tino Cincinnati out of Indiana to be their new offensive coordinator. We'll see what Tino Cincinnati is able to do out there. He'll certainly have a good quarterback room. They certainly brought in Nico from Tennessee. I think Nico's got a lot of stuff to work on, and Tino Cincinnati is going to have to coach him up. But it'll be something to watch. But it's just a number of different areas that you look at and you say, hey, does it make sense? I would say from this portion, no, it would not make sense for the ACC to combine with the Big 12. I think overall, when it comes to 2030, I think there's going to be a Super League. I truly do. I think there's going to be a Super League in 2030. That's why ESPN and ACC lowered the buyout for teams to leave in 2030. And I think that's where it's going to go. I think there's going to be an absolute model of where the college football breaks off from the NCAA and everybody else stays back with the NCAA, which I think is how it should be. And then if you really look at it from a different perspective to where you start doing a Super League where you start doing pods, and I think that you start to really engage in certain portions of the scheduling agreement to where you start having, let's say you may have in a conference, let's say, for instance, maybe every conference has 7 conference games. And then automatically the rest of your non-con games, your 5 remaining games are all non-con games between the SEC, Big 10, and the Big 12. Can you imagine all those matchups? I mean, that would be truly impressive, to say the least. I mean, that would be fun to watch. So we'll watch and see what those pods look like, what the conferences look like. We'll watch and see what it monitors out to be. Let's see here. Stop sharing. There we go. Again, guys, while you're tuning in, again, down below, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It certainly helps out with the algorithm. Also, if you have not done so, on Facebook, if you're on Facebook, I've created a new Facebook page for Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Make sure you go on to Facebook, Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Make sure you go on there and you subscribe and like and follow the podcast on there, because once we hit 100 followers, I'll be able to live stream on Facebook as well. So again, if you're over on X right now, head on over to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts. Guys, again, I think it's going to be it for tonight. A quick show, wanted to get on here. If indeed, let's see here. If there is indeed a Super League, where does Pitt fall in the pecking order? I think the Super League, you would probably see 68 teams. I'd say they're in the top, 40 or 35. I think it's where they're at. And then you'll have years where Pitt tunes up and is able to get towards the top in terms of maybe the top 20, top 15. And then you're able to get potentially into a playoff because they're in a conference and they're able to win their conference or compete for the top 2 spots and have a chance to get in there. I think Pitt would certainly be in the Super League, to say the least. And personally, I think it would be so much fun. I think the cross collateralizing the conferences and facing certain teams, facing SEC and Big 10 teams and Big 12 teams. I mean, I think a cool game would be Pitt versus Kansas State. Just 2 tough-nailed teams. Pitt versus Iowa State would be fun. I think would be a good football game. Pitt versus Tennessee. Pitt versus Arkansas. Pitt versus Michigan State. Pitt versus Penn State. Pitt versus Indiana. Pitt versus Minnesota. Iowa. I mean, all those teams. You look across the board. I think would be a really good league and really fun to watch. If you could pick one coach currently to coach Pitt, who would it be? Ooh, this is a great question. If I had to pick one coach to coach Pitt right now, um, hmm, let me think about this. This is a really good question. So I've got a number of coaches. I have like a 1A. Can I I'll do I'm doing like a 1A and 1B. Um, I would say hmm. I'll start with my 1B. My 1B would be Indianapolis Colts defensive line coach Charlie Partridge. That would be the 1B. But the 1A, the number one coach I would want coaching Pitt because of his toughness of how he coaches. And if I could just, if Pitt could pay him whatever he wanted to get, um, I think that one coach would be Dan Lanning. I think the way that he coaches, I think the way that he performs, I think the way that he just embodies toughness. Um, I think if you didn't have to get a head football coach, I think there'd be a number of different guys on the staffs. Like, for instance, um, I had a couple names out there. Who would there be? Hold on a second here. I have a couple names actually. This is a great question, by the way. I'd like do a video on this because there's going to come a time when Pat Narduzzi retires. So this will be interesting. Let's see here. Oh, one guy I would really like, Glenn Schumann, defensive coordinator out of Georgia. I think he would be really good. There's a number of guys you can go through here. I actually have a list here of different guys. Let me see here. Hold on. I have a list here actually that I made a while back. Oregon offensive coordinator Will Stein. So I had a whole huge list made up. Offensive coordinator Will Stein out of Oregon. Defensive coordinator Schumann out of Georgia is a name to watch. Who else did I have in here? Liberty head coach Jamie Chadwell. I think he's a guy to watch. UTSA head football coach Jeff Traylor. He's done a hell of a job anywhere he's ever gone. He's done a good job. And then there's some other names on there too, but obviously too, I always had Charlie Partridge on there. I think Charlie, because of how he can recruit and develop, would be something. I like Lanning and Dabo. I think Dabo, if it was like the transfer portal wasn't open, I would say Dabo. But I think with the way the college football era is going, I don't know if I'd want Dabo at this point, even though I still think he's a hell of a football coach. Pitt has passed over a great Pitt man, excellent coach for years. He's at BC right now, and Pitt has never made him feel welcome. It's time to bring Tim Lewis back to Pitt. Tell you what, man, he's a great football coach. He's been here before. I just think that where college football is going, I don't think Tim Lewis would be a good head football coach. I think he'd be a great assistant head football coach or defensive coordinator. He's doing a good job at Boston College. I think Bill O'Brien made a hell of a hire with him. I don't even think he'd want to be a head football coach, to be quite honest. I think Tim Lewis is at that point where he's at his last stop with Billy O'Brien, from what my understanding is. But he's doing a good job up there, man. I think he's a great coach overall. He was certainly here at Pitt at one point, but like anything else, they haven't made that push. This is a really good one. I have a full list here. Hold on. Let's see here. I also think I had Andy Kotelnicki on there, offensive coordinator at Penn State. I think he's a guy to watch. He is gonna get a chance at some point. Let me see here. Again, Charlie Partridge. I think Charlie would be, because what people don't understand is Charlie can recruit, and he has a number of different guys who could be offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. He's had one shot to be a head football coach, and he rebuilt that entire FAU team. Lane Kiffin comes in and starts winning with his players. That's before the transfer portal. Garrett Riley's a name to watch. I have a number of names on here. Bobby Slowick, Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Brian Grubb, offensive coordinator at Alabama. Let me see here. I say I had Andy Kotelnicki on here. I took Mike Denbrock off. Let me see here. Let's see. Blake Baker, LSU defensive coordinator. Tosh Lupoy, Oregon D coordinator, or Will Stein, Oregon's offensive coordinator. I think Will Stein's going to be a hell of a head football coach. Pete Golding, Ole Miss defensive coordinator. He's a guy who's been watched it in numerous different places. Georgia, he was at Georgia and then at Ole Miss. He's got to watch. Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator at Clemson. Glenn Schumann, again, another D coordinator. Glenn Schumann is over at Georgia as a defensive coordinator there. Let me see here. Who else do I have on here? That's all I had on there. And obviously Charlie. That's really all I've had on here. If I did a whole list, it'd be something. But Andy Kotelnicki's towards the top. I think he'd be a great head football coach. A number of different names. But that is a great question. That is a great question, by the way. Adam, tremendous job. Well, guys, I think that's going to be it for tonight. Again, if you have not done so, hit the like button, subscribe. Let me know in the comment section when this is posted. Do you like the 4-4-2-2-1-3 model or the 5+11 model? Let me know in the comment section. Guys, the show is what it is because of you. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Share this on Twitter. Share it on Facebook. Pitt Panther Fanatics, you name it. Again, guys, thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Again, as always, hail to Pitt and hail to the ACC. I'll see you next time.